So this video we're going to be talking about the possibilities within Illustrator. You know, there's so many things that people don't know Illustrator can do, and it's a really versatile program. So you know, things like Photoshop or other software like InDesign, and they all have their specific uses. But the great thing about Illustrator is that it kind of dips into all of those different programs, and I find you can do almost anything within Illustrator. So it kind of becomes my go-to. But let's talk about why I use Illustrator specifically. One of the biggest reasons why I use Illustrator is because I like vector images, creating vector graphics over raster graphics. So with Adobe, with Adobe Photoshop, you'll end up using everything is created out of pixels, which is a rasterized image. So it's built up of all those little tiny blocks of color that when you put them all together, you see your image. But with vector graphics in Illustrator, it's just made out of closed paths. So what that means is that you're not using it out of pixels. It's just out of closed path objects, which is you could take an item like you could build an icon in Illustrator, and if you wanted to blow it up the size of a billboard, you could and not lose any quality, which is awesome. So in Photoshop, whatever you kind of set your image to, the size at, if you make it any larger than that, you're going to start seeing some pixelation because those little squares, those pixels, are going to start getting bigger, and you're going to start noticing it. You're going to lose some quality there. So, for example, if you're in here's Illustrator. Actually, let me show you. Here's Photoshop. So, if I were to this dragonfly here, I built it out in Illustrator, but I brought it into Photoshop, so now it is a rasterized image, and now it's pixelized. So it looks great here, but if I were to zoom in, you'll start to notice that it's made out of these little blocks, and you'll start losing some color. So if you were to make this larger and blow it up, this is what you would see instead of this clear image right here. So that's the downfall of making things out of using raster images in Photoshop. But if you're in Illustrator, the great thing about that is if you were to zoom in, doesn't matter how far you zoom in, it's going to stay clear as a bell. So you don't lose any quality no matter how you scale it. So what that does for me is great when I'm working with clients and on tight deadlines, or if they need to make a lot of edits. It's great because I can go ahead and make changes on the fly and not worry about how I set up the image at the very beginning, because size-wise it won't matter, because however I do it here in Illustrator, I can just blow it up or alter it. And so again, so that's the difference between raster and vector. But just editing images. So these are all different shapes and stuff like that, and you can do that with layers in Photoshop. But what's cool is you can just kind of click on different points, add different points onto shapes, and you can alter them however you want. You can alter things very quickly, and and changing color and areas and stuff like that is a lot simpler in Illustrator. There's a lot more things that you can edit and quicker and not lose quality. So that's kind of those are the two biggest things that I like it for. But just if you want to have things very precise and kind of more technical, you like to build with shapes, it's perfect for that, because you can there's so many ways that we'll learn later on, how we can subtract shapes, build with shapes, and that's kind of how I see Illustrator and how it differs from everything else. Is you're able to you more build your graphics rather than draw them, where in other programs you kind of draw and it's a little more freehand. You can definitely do that in Illustrator, but with Illustrator, the thing it has that others don't is its capability of building with shapes and how precise it can be. So just take that into consideration as you're thinking about how you build things, and that's kind of how I approach it. But yeah, so it's great for Illustrator is great for print and web, which is awesome. And so let me show you some examples of things that you can do in Illustrator, kind of get you excited about the possibilities, but also just maybe show you what you haven't seen before. So not all these images are mine, obviously, but I just kind of dragged and dropped some things that I think that would be perfect to be built in Illustrator. If they weren't made in Illustrator, they definitely could. you could definitely render them in Illustrator if you wanted to. So things like patterns, repeatable, seamless patterns are great to make in Illustrator, because you can, like I said, you can make them large or small. It doesn't matter, but you can build it, and you can kind of keep. That's another thing with building vector images. You can keep your file sizes very small for keeping that amount of quality. If you were going to keep that kind of quality in a raster image, you'd have to make it huge, and it would slow down your computer, make your fill up your hard drive, all that type of stuff. So vector images are very small file sizes, but they can keep that quality. But yeah, so going along, you can kind of tell how technical some of these things are and how straight and geometric some of these icons or these illustrations tend to be. That's a good indicator that it was built in Illustrator, and if it wasn't, it definitely could be, and it'd be a really quick, easy process. And as you can see, you can start adding, you can even add textures. You can make it feel a little more hand-drawn around the edges, like I did for this Camp NaNoWriMo poster. Here, I mean, you can see how it's kind of the jagged edges there, and that kind of made it feel a little bit more stamped or however printed. And that's something I did all in Illustrator. So obviously, like these old ads, they weren't made in Illustrator, but they definitely could be. You can get really detailed. And make it look very realistic, which actually helps you in other types of artwork too, like UI, which I'll show you in a second. But one of the biggest things that people use Illustrator for now is lettering, because you can customize letters, you can build them, shape them, and all that type of things, and even build typefaces. That wouldn't be the choice, I guess, amongst the actual typographers if they were going to build a full typeface, but you can actually, you could make. Most people make all their custom lettering within Adobe Illustrator, and easily editable, like I said. And you can kind of see some examples of what people have done. And then you can use things within. You can do a lot of things for web or for mobile apps and things like that, like your iconography. You can make things look a little more realistic in buttons and interfaces, like data visualizations, all that type of stuff is great. And you can even generate all your graphs within Illustrator, and a lot of really cool things that you can do here. So I hope this kind of gives you a good idea of what's possible and helps you get a little bit excited about what you're going to be learning. So. Looking forward to talking about how to set up your document in the next video. So thank you.